The year does not begin with fireworks. It begins in silence. A cold morning, an empty room. The calendar changes its number, but nothing else moves. No applause, no witnesses, just breath and time. This is how real beginnings arrive. Quiet, unannounced, almost unnoticed. Most men are taught to fear this moment. They rush to fill it. Noise, resolutions shouted into the void. Parties, crowds, distraction. Anything to avoid being alone with the weight of a fresh year pressing against their chest. But there is a different way to cross this threshold. To start the year alone is not a failure of social gravity. It is a return to something older, something truer. Ancient men understood this. They marked transitions with withdrawal. Before war, before harvest, before kings were crowned, there was solitude. Because silence is not emptiness. Silence is a sharpening stone. When the world goes quiet, you can finally hear yourself. And at the edge of a new year, that matters more than motivation, more than plans, more than promises. Because before a man can move forward, he must first stand still. Doorways between what was and what will be. The beginning of a year is one of them. Psychologically, it is a reset. The mind loosens its grip on old narratives. The identity you carried through the last 12 months grows softer, more negotiable. This is why the first days of the year feel strange, almost unreal. You are briefly unanchored. Most men panic here. They grab onto goals not because they are true, but because they are familiar. They copy ambitions from others. They inherit desires they never examined. But the man who begins the year alone does something rarer. He listens. In solitude, there is no audience to impress, no role to perform, no mask to adjust. You are not a son, not a friend, not a co-worker. You are simply a man sitting with time. This is uncomfortable, and that discomfort is the point, because clarity does not come from excitement, it comes from stillness. Marcus Aurelius wrote that a man should retreat into himself whenever possible, not to escape duty, but to remember who he is beneath it. Starting the year alone is exactly that kind of retreat, not running away from life, but stepping back to see it clearly. These insights do not arrive when you are surrounded by others. They arrive when there is nowhere to hide. Loneliness, when chosen consciously, becomes a mirror. Carl Jung warned that what we refuse to face within ourselves will meet us as fate. Solitude is how a man meets those things early, on his own terms. This is why the start of the year matters. You are briefly free from momentum. The old excuses sound weaker. The future feels open but undefined. If you fill that space too quickly, you lose it. But if you sit inside it, if you let the silence stretch, you begin to feel something solid forming beneath the uncertainty. A quieter kind of confidence, not the loud certainty of someone who thinks he has everything figured out, but the grounded assurance of someone who is no longer lying to himself. You are making a subtle declaration. I am willing to meet myself without distraction. A year does not need grand plans to be meaningful. It needs alignment, and alignment begins in silence. He is ahead, by a margin that cannot be measured yet. While others rush forward with borrowed maps, he studies the terrain. While others speak, he listens. While others announce, he prepares. This is not weakness. This is restraint. And restraint is one of the oldest forms of power a man can cultivate. No one to toast with. Do not rush to escape it. Sit with it. Let the silence do its work. Because something ancient is happening beneath the surface. Something slow. Something structural. You are standing at a threshold, stripped of distraction, face to face with time. And if you have the discipline to remain there long enough, the year will not begin loudly. It will begin correctly. There is a quiet confusion men carry when they are alone. They call it loneliness, but often it is something else. Loneliness is absence without choice. Solitude is presence by decision. The difference matters more than most men realize. At the start of the year, when routines loosen and the world pauses, that confusion surfaces. A man sits alone and wonders if something is wrong with him. Why am I not surrounded? Why does this feel heavy? The mind, trained by comparison, rushes to judgment. But strength and weakness are not defined by numbers. They are defined by agency. A man alone because he is unwanted feels small. A man alone because he has chosen distance feels deliberate. The outer image may look identical. The inner posture is completely different. The brain has grown dependent on external stimulation to regulate emotion. When the noise stops, unresolved material rises. Memories, regrets, unfinished thoughts. The average man interprets this as loneliness. The disciplined man recognizes it as an invitation to differentiate, to ask, am I alone because I am drifting or because I am refining? Chosen solitude has a different texture. It feels heavy at first, then clean, uncomfortable, then clarifying. Loneliness drains energy, solitude concentrates it. Builders retreated from the crowd before producing work that mattered. This pattern is not accidental. Identity requires space. If you are constantly surrounded, you are constantly shaped. Other people's moods, expectations, and assumptions press against you. Over time, your edges blur. Solitude restores definition. At the start of the year, this matters deeply, because a man cannot choose a direction if he does not know where he ends and the world begins. Chosen solitude redraws that boundary. No one to distract you from boredom, no one to soften the truth. You are confronted with your own capacity to sit still. This is a test. Most men fail. They reach for their phone. They manufacture plans. They seek validation. Not because connection is bad, but because silence demands maturity. To remain alone without numbing yourself requires emotional strength. It means tolerating ambiguity. It means allowing feelings without dramatizing them. This is how self-trust is built. A man learns that he can carry his own weight, that he does not collapse without external reassurance, that his inner world, while imperfect, is survivable. What was once called loneliness transforms into presence. You notice your body, your posture, the rhythm of your thinking. This is not introspection for its own sake. It is calibration. The man who never calibrates himself becomes reactive, pulled by moods, driven by trends, defined by what he is against rather than what he stands for. Solitude corrects this drift. It asks nothing from you except honesty. It does not flatter, it does not condemn, it clarifies, like a blade removed from battle to be sharpened. And the man who uses it begins the year with something rare in the modern world. This happens unconsciously. The presence of others is a mirror, but not always a clean one. It reflects expectations, projections, and roles that slowly harden into identity. At the beginning of the year, distance becomes medicine, because space removes the pressure to perform. A reliable friend, a productive employee, a version that fits. There is nothing wrong with these roles, but when a man never steps outside them, he forgets which parts are essential and which are borrowed. Solitude strips identity down to what remains when no one is watching. This is why it feels disorienting at first. Without feedback, the ego loses its reference points. There is no immediate reward for saying the right thing. No punishment for silence. The mind, used to external calibration, flails. But if you stay long enough, something important happens. The false noise begins to fall away. Standards you enforced on yourself because you feared judgment. When the crowd disappears, these voices weaken. And in that weakening, a deeper voice becomes audible. Not louder, just steadier. It does not shout commands or offer 5-step plans. It speaks in sensations, in unease, in quiet certainty. This is intuition, often neglected, often mistrusted. Modern men are trained to override it, to rationalize away discomfort, to follow systems rather than signals. But intuition is not mystical. It is accumulated experience speaking softly. Solitude is how you relearn to hear it. When you are constantly surrounded, that signal is drowned out. The nervous system adapts to noise. Solitude resets it. You begin to feel resistance more clearly. Which obligations feel heavy for no reason? Which commitments drain you before they even begin? You also feel pull. Moments when energy returns. When effort feels clean rather than forced. When time passes differently. These sensations are not random. They are data, but only silence allows them to register. It is a predictable outcome of a social species living in a hypersocial world. But the beginning of a year is one of the few times when a man can interrupt this pattern. By stepping back, he stops rehearsing old roles. By staying quiet, he stops reinforcing old scripts. The past loses some of its grip. When you create distance, you see relationships more clearly. Which ones are reciprocal? Which ones depend on you being smaller? Which ones support growth, and which ones quietly resist it? This clarity can be unsettling, but confusion is far more dangerous than discomfort. A man who never evaluates his social environment becomes a product of it. Solitude gives him the vantage point to choose. Solitude gives you a clean line of sight. That stability does not come from confidence tricks or social dominance. It comes from having stood alone long enough to hear what actually matters. It is refinement. There is a point in solitude where distraction no longer works. You sit, you breathe, you wait, and the mind, stripped of its usual exits, turns inward. This is where most men retreat, because this is where the uncomfortable self lives. Not the version curated for others, not the functional persona that gets things done, but the raw accumulation of memory, regret, fear, and unspoken desire. When the year begins and you are alone, this encounter is almost inevitable, and it is not gentle. Decisions you justified but never resolved. The instinct is to label this as overthinking. It is not. It is unfinished psychological business asking to be seen. Carl Jung called this the shadow, the parts of the self that were ignored, denied, or pushed aside because they did not fit the image you needed to survive. The shadow does not disappear through avoidance. It waits, and solitude is where it speaks. But information that demands courage. You may realize you've been playing smaller than your capacity, or chasing goals that were never truly yours, or avoiding responsibility because it frightened you. This recognition hurts, but it is clean pain, the kind that leads somewhere. The uncomfortable self does not want grand gestures. It wants honesty, to admit, this is where I am. This is what I have been avoiding. This is what I am capable of if I stop lying to myself. There is no performance pressure. Without deadlines, there is no urgency theatre. You are free to see yourself as you are, without commentary. This is unsettling, but it is also liberating. Because once seen clearly, something shifts. Shame loses some of its power. Fear becomes more specific and therefore manageable. Desire becomes clearer. You begin to understand what is actually costing you energy, what compromises you made that corroded self-respect, what comforts dulled your edge. This understanding does not arrive as a list. It arrives as a feeling of alignment, or the lack of it. He improves externally but remains internally divided. The division is the problem. Meeting the uncomfortable self is how integration begins, not perfection, not purity. Wholeness. Accuracy creates leverage. From accuracy, discipline becomes realistic. Change becomes strategic. Growth becomes sustainable. The responsibility to know yourself well enough to direct your life deliberately. Stillness. Not the fragile stillness of avoidance, but the grounded stillness of orientation. This is where direction is rebuilt. Not through force, not through frantic planning, but through alignment. When a man has faced himself honestly, noise loses its urgency. He no longer feels pressured to move just to escape discomfort. Action becomes intentional. This is the quiet power of starting from stillness. You begin to sense which efforts are worth suffering for and which struggles were never necessary. This discernment is rare, and it cannot be rushed. But say, stillness clarifies the why, and structure outlasts motivation. He builds systems that work on his worst days, not his best ones. This is how momentum is sustained. It feels like something you must honor, Opportunities respond to men who are internally ordered. You are alone because you are preparing. And preparation, when done properly, is calm. There comes a moment when solitude has done its work. You feel it not as excitement, but as steadiness. The urge to announce fades. The need for validation quiets. You are no longer hiding and no longer preparing. You are ready to return. But you return differently. They become reactive when challenged. But the man who has stood alone at the beginning of the year, who has felt the weight of time without distraction, carries an internal reference point. He does not need the room to agree with him to remain steady. This is not arrogance, it is independence of mind. You bring silence into conversation. You bring restraint into decision-making. You bring patience into conflict. You do not rush to fill space anymore, because you know its value. He simply takes responsibility, consistently. This reliability is magnetic. People trust men who are not secretly desperate. Once a wide unknown feels inhabitable. You are not waiting for permission, not seeking a sign. You are already moving, quietly. The world will never tell you to begin in silence. It will always suggest noise, crowds, certainty before understanding. But some of the strongest foundations are poured unseen. Starting the year alone is not a retreat from life. It is a return to authorship. It is the decision to let your nervous system settle, to let your mind clear, to let your values surface without interference. In that quiet, you did not become someone new. You remembered what mattered. You faced what was uncomfortable. You cut away what was borrowed. You rebuilt direction without urgency. That work does not announce itself, but it holds. As the year moves forward, distractions will return. Opinions will press in. Momentum will try to carry you faster than you should go. When that happens, remember where you began. In silence. With yourself. Standing still long enough to choose deliberately. That memory is an anchor. You do not need to isolate yourself to remain grounded. You only need to protect the inner space you created, because the man who can be alone without collapsing, who can move without rushing, who can act without needing applause,